must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
It is ridiculous and it is against the laws of nature that we can have somebody sitting pretty who takes home more money than the credible entrepreneur who is doing actual production of goods and services.
We always say it as it is. It is only in this country that when a thief is arrested, you hear elders from their tribe saying, "He is our son and he is our thief."
If you are Kenyan
Yes.
and I call you leader, probably you are already a leader, but you are leading in the wrong direction.
We want to see the role of the youth
Yeah.
in the security,
Yes.
governance,
Yes.
and development.
The youth that I meet and work with here, you know, we call them the millennials and X's and Y's, and it's not, they don't necessarily want to live like their fathers and grandfathers,
Yes.
do business like their fathers and grandfathers. They're more independent, they're better educated, and they're the ones that are making everything move in this region.
We look at the issues, we talk about issues that impact people's lives in Africa. The African peoples themselves continue to cheer bad leaders, and because they cheer them on, they continue to be misled.
Let me ask you, doctor, would you rather be somebody who does not enjoy so much freedom but you are rich?
Yes.
Or you'd rather be poor who you are actually imprisoned by the poverty itself?
My goal is not to come here and say, I want the majority ownership, I want to own this, I want to own that, I want to do this. My goal is we all make money and we're all happy, and I help build a big business here.
Punchline is for Africa, with Africa, from Africa.
Good afternoon, viewers. I want to take a few minutes in the Africa School of Thought. I want to say a few points regarding the situation of the Chief Justice in the Republic of Kenya. The Chief Justice is part of the governance of the people of Kenya. He is one arm of the governance of the Republic of Kenya. The Chief Justice has never convened or tried to convene a meeting between the President, the Speaker of National Assembly, and himself to find out the weakest link in the fight in the governance of the people of Kenya. It is therefore very shameful for the whole Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya to use a platform, external platform, to announce a regime change proceeds using the platforms of international civil society to dismember the government of Republic of Kenya. As a Pan-African, I feel sorry and saddened by the events that are taking place in the judiciary of the Republic of Kenya. The President or the executive has done its best. It has given the funding that is needed to fight corruption. Every time the agencies that fight corruption arrange, indict, and deliver a suspect in the courts of the Republic of Kenya, the same judiciary that the Chief Justice represents, the same judiciary that the Chief Justice says it is very perfect, releases these people at times on flimsy reasons, blocks the route of justice, obstructs justice. The case of the former Deputy Chief Justice, Lady Mwiru, who was found who should have taken a plea, but because of the problems that the judiciary has and the weaknesses, the incompetences that the judiciary has, the Lady Justice Mwiru was allowed to petition the DCI and DPP's application and a charge. She never took a charge, a plea in the normal courts. Of course, the events are much bigger than what we see today. It is sorry state that the Chief Justice is the one who can mention about the failure, yet the word failure is actually associated with the judiciary of the Republic of Kenya. Everybody in the judiciary knows, every Kenyan, young or old, knows that there is a problem with the Chief Justice. I take one example. For the Chief Justice to talk about the nullified elections, that dynasties collect themselves in kingdoms, in business entrepreneurs win an election, shows to you that he has something that is against the current administration of President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. I therefore call upon the international community not to listen to the side that actually weakened the fight against corruption in Kenya, but help the Kenyan people to fight corruption. Because the weakest link, which all of us know, is the judiciary in Kenya. Justice was pleasing the civil society funders, the NGOs that gathered in Oxford. Let them hear this message, that it is him and him alone. It is his incompetency, the lack of direction, the lack of leadership, the poor leadership qualities, the lack of pointing out the mistakes in law. The law itself that the Chief Justice talks about is the one to recommend which type of law. He can also suggest to the other two arms of government that the laws in Kenya surrounding cases of corruption are weak. But as usual, he has been a weakest link, remains a weakest link, who is plotting, who is planning, who is trying to execute a foreign instigated plan against the Jubilee government. Thank you very much, viewers. That is a statement as far as the situation of Kenya is concerned. The Chief Justice, therefore, is plotting a coup, a constitutional coup, because he is trying to blackmail the leadership of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you very much, viewers. God bless you.
Indeed, it is a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the People's Court, where we get to discuss the issues that really touch on not just Kenya but across Africa. But today we have a special attention into a matter. Tomorrow, Kenya will be having our budget reading for year 2019-2020. So we thought we would just like to hear your thoughts. The Kenyans who are watching us out there, or anybody across the world, you can, have your opinion and have your say say on the show and make your contribution. It's called the People's Court because your opinion matters and it counts here. And of course, the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary will on Thursday, that is tomorrow, unveil the spending plans for the financial year that begins on July 1st. And he will also indicate how his ministry will plans to fund the 3.02 trillion budget. And of course, it's the most ambitious budget in Kenya's history. And to help me go through this conversation is none other than Tawish, Samuel Tawish.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm looking forward for tomorrow.
3.02 billion, trillion Kenya shillings budget.
It does look of ambitious budget, but again, you see now our needs have grown. We have so many developmental projects that we need to implement. The biggest thing then will be what is the reality when it comes to financing this budget. I mean, that is now where the question lies. Yeah.
So also, of course, the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury had given an outline earlier on. And of course, there are big takers for this year's budget that includes education. And according to a budget statement on the ministry's website, I just checked a while ago, education sector will get the lion's share of 473.4 billion Kenya shillings. First of all, does it deserve this much money?
Yeah, well, it does, because again, when you look into the government plan and policies regarding the education, the entire, of course, the implementation of the new curriculum, the teacher training and promotions, and all those kinds of things, the construction of the tertiary centers or the institutions in the country, and so much when it comes to the higher education loans and all those other things. I mean, it's something that is called for when you look into that budgetary allocation. I would really say that it's a good move.
It's a good move.
Yeah.
But also we cannot forget last year, when you mentioned the new curriculum and the new books are being introduced. Remember, 7 billion shillings went to the drains because the books that were printed were not even okay. They did not meet the standard. They had all manner of confusion, and nobody's really talking about it. So when we have such a huge chunk of the money going to education, and you know it's a very important sector in this country because we need to get our people educated, and even our four founding fathers, that was one of the pillars, one of the things they wanted to make sure that the country gets, so that we get rid of ignorance. Essentially, that was the reason why. And so when 7 billion shillings got lost last year, the other year, nobody's talking about it.
Well, I think with the monies that have been lost, not only limited to education sector, it's something that really like cuts across the other sectors in the country today. It doesn't necessarily mean then we have to limit expenditure on these particular sectors. What we need to do, and I think government needs to do a due diligence when it comes to how this money is going to be disbursed to these critical sectors, to ensure that all loopholes where people maybe are going to or intend to siphon this money, or the money is not going to be for the intended use, it's going to be reduced significantly. I think that is the bottom line, and that is how we should actually, that is where we should put our focus in, compared to really saying like, because maybe a lot of money was lost last time in the education sector or in agriculture, or maybe say in the road sector or even the transport generally, it does not really prompt us to limit allocation to that particular or to those particular sectors.
But we have a right to query.
We have a right to query. Now what we need to do is that now that we have this money allocated in these particular sectors, we want to see how this is going to be utilized. That is the most important thing, because again, that has been the biggest concern of the Kenyan taxpayers, that they are giving out, they're actually paying taxes, but again, they're not maybe looking at, they're not seeing or they're not feeling the value for the taxes they're paying, because a lot of money is going into a few people's pockets, or a few people are actually looting the money that we actually are sweating to give to the government to provide good services for us as a people. So the most important thing is that much as they will be appealing, they'll be giving us these projections, they'll be giving us this budget tomorrow and telling us exactly how they want this budget to be implemented. But again, I understand the Kenyan populace are going to take a huge chunk of it in terms of how they're going to actually pay taxes to fund this budget. So much as they're doing this, they also want accountability. they want what we'll call transparency in as far as how these funds are going to be utilized, because again that will be motivating the taxpayer to continually give out to the government so that we can have better services. But again, when you're giving and there's nothing you're getting in terms of services in return, then it demoralizes you completely, and that's why you'll find we'll be having a very big problem. Instead of us having or bridging that gap or increasingly getting more revenues and taxes from the Kenya Revenue Authority, every other information or every other time they post their end year reports, you're told that we are not actually meeting the target. What does it tell you? There's a lot of apathy when it comes also to taxes. So what we need to get to the bottom line, what is informing this apathy amongst the Kenyan people, amongst the informal sector? Why are they not willing to pay taxes? It may not be something that like they just woke up and decided we are no longer going to pay taxes. Maybe they are seeing it is not actually commensurate to what they are supposed to be getting in return. And
talking about meeting the target, that is the Kenya Revenue Authority, the institution that is mandated to collect the tax and manage the taxes the country is collecting. They are collecting on behalf of the country. We cannot, we cannot forget what happened just a few days ago. Remember, there's been there was a raid, or there was an investigation that was being done at the KRA, at the Times Tower, and the top staff and some junior staff were arrested. And I think the investigations are continuing, and we've seen a lot of wrangles that is happening in there, because it is believed that even if you're a cleaner at KRA, somehow you own a house somewhere. It's like a get-rich-quick scheme when you work at KRA. And so when you see, and they come to us, and we see how much taxes has been, like now, even the basic commodities, the prices has gone up because the taxing has gone up. When you pay for your power, I don't know how much you pay in your house. Sometimes I feel like I'm paying for a small industry. I wonder, do I use all this power in my house? When you pay even for any service, the tax has gone really up, be it water, be it anything that you need, you cannot avoid. So the basic commodities, the basic services, as Kenyans, the taxing has made the prices go up, and Kenyans are struggling. So do you think that the KRA really is passing too much burden in terms of this tax collection, and at the end of the day, they're coming to us and telling us they're not meeting the target? Where is the disconnect?
Well, Miriam, I'm one of those Kenyans, few Kenyans to be precise, who have chosen to be optimistic rather than pessimistic as regards to some of these challenges we are facing, mostly in some of these critical agencies in our country today. Why am I saying I'm optimistic? Because I'm seeing some of the measures that the government is putting in place through for example, the anti-graft agencies. Because again, before we never used to see, for example, the arrest that we witnessed lately at the Kenya Revenue Authority. I mean, not until when we saw George Kinoti come in as the new DCI, and of course DPP Nordin Haji, who are now in office. I mean, these people are up to the task. I mean, there's that also latest information you've actually you read in your previous show that the two alongside the other officers are actually in Washington trying to see how they can get the help of FBI and other, of course, agencies in to help Kenya get rid of corruption and also by extension terrorism in our country today. So that gives me hope that at least much as we have experienced all these shortfalls, that there's something that is being done by these relevant agencies to try and maybe reduce this, if not to eliminate completely. So getting back to the Kenya Revenue Authority, I mean, this has been remains a very big nightmare for Kenyans, because much as they are supposed to give us clear policies and give us measures on how they are going to continually add onto that task basket by ensuring that they do sensitization on to the people to continually embrace contribution of taxes. They're not doing much. Like I said earlier, I mean, we continually post, negative results every other financial year in as far as KRA, collection of taxes is concerned. And we have a big number of people who are working in these institutions. They've gone there and completely forgotten the sole reason why they were appointed into those offices, or why they were recruited into those offices. Theirs is about enriching themselves, and it's not more of really serving the Kenyan people or the calling with which they were recruited to do. So that's a big challenge that we are facing. But again, I think with such kind of incidences that we saw, the arrest and of course the prosecution of those individuals is going to serve as a deterrent measure, not only to those ones, but also those who will be intending maybe to partake in such criminal activities. Because you talk about importation today. Talk about maybe the contraband sugar, the importation of maize in the country, and so many other goods and services and products that come into the country without really due diligence. Whereas we have KRA, an institution that is well financed, well oiled by the government of Kenya, but they're not doing much to help the government actually realize its potential goals. So I will say that we are optimistic that maybe with these new people in office, it is going to help us, and maybe eventually you're going to see good results at the Kenya Revenue Authority.
And you're saying you mean the new people in office, the DCI?
I mean the DCI and the DPP, because again, these people look like they have been, having a field day at the KRA. Nothing much has been happening to them. I've been seeing so much of these things happening in the past, but nothing has been happening to them. But like I said, the new people now who are in anti-graft agencies are proving to be able to the task.
Are they really proving to be able to the task? Because some of these arrests, it looks like it's just a public gimmick. At the end of the day, we want to see people behind bars. We haven't seen yet. So you see when it's like it's a public spectacle, some of these arrests. You see when they were arresting the KRA staff, when they were arresting the governor for Kiambu, who apparently had embezzled 588 million shillings of Kiambu County, was misappropriated, and this other public arrest. It's sort of media is involved, and they've not done investigations properly, and it's just a public spectacle. And at the end of the day, these people get let off the hook. So that's why, because if at all, you mentioned that the arrests are supposed to act as a deterrent for anybody who thinks about going to be involved in corrupt practices, but that hasn't, even in all these things happening, that hasn't acted as a deterrent, because they know somehow there's a loophole in the law, there's a loophole somehow, they'll still be walking in the streets scot-free. What do you say to that?
Well, Miriam, I'm one of those people, like I said earlier, I don't believe in a blanket dismissiveness, like saying maybe, the office of the DPP is not doing much, or the office of the DCI is not doing much, or even the judiciary. Like I've said, each and every of these organizations have really a noble task to ensure that they carry out their duties as prescribed by the Constitution. Why am I saying so? Because today, you see, like the fight against corruption does not necessarily lie on an individual or one organization. It's something that actually carries on board a lot of institutions, including the EACC, the Office of the DPP, the DCI, and also the goodwill from Kenyans themselves, and also the judiciary. So you will have to underscore the fact that we need some kind of coherence amongst all these organizations for us to succeed in the fight against corruption. If you have an institution or one of these institutions actually not doing their job right, then it will be posing a challenge to the entire process. You have the Office of the DCI who, for example, ensure that maybe arrests or investigations have been done, and the DPP is here to carry prosecution. And you have the judges or the judiciary, which is supposed to ensure that justice has been served, or all these matters have been addressed adequately, and maybe judgments have been made as regards to these cases. So if you're going to have any weak link, or you're going to have any loophole within this chain, then it's going to pose a very big challenge. So people will be laying blame, for example, to DPP's office, or to the DCI, or to the EACC, or sometimes even to the judiciary. Because I've seen even Chief Justice Dr. Maraga David coming out sometimes and saying, much as these individuals are being arrested and arraigned in court, we need to have watertight and sufficient evidence that is going to actually make sure that these individuals are going to be prosecuted. So, the blame is not only on one institution or an individual. Each and everyone in this institution have to play their role, and including, like I said, by extension, the ordinary people who have to really demonstrate that goodwill by also informing, for example, the investigating agencies, by being whistleblowers voluntarily and helping the government in the fight against corruption.
Yes, indeed. And of course, as you mentioned before, the DCI and the DPP that gone to the United States, and they met with the leadership of the FBI there, and the United States FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, has agreed to bring some of their officers here to train and help Kenyans in the fight against corruption. So let's see if at all things will change, and we'll see some people being prosecuted. We're tired of these public relations stunts we see all the time.
I'm sure such news is sending some goosebumps to some people in the country. I hope you're not one of them.
Oh no. I work for every cent I spend.
Okay.
So anyway, so in the health sector, this year the Treasury has allocated 93 billion Kenya shillings. First of all, let's just start with first things first. devolvement of health sector? Was it a bad idea?
Well, it may not really been a bad idea because in generality, why am I saying so? Because the intention primarily to actually decentralize the health sector to the counties maybe was well informed by the fact that we needed to have counties underscoring the needs of their people within their jurisdictions. But again, with the challenges that we have seen, it is time for us to try and see whether we can have a review of the same. There was a time, I remember former Prime Minister Raila Odinga made a proposal that maybe we should have an institution like that of the TSC, I mean the Health Service Commission, that is actually delinked from either the county government or even the national government, so that it can I mean independently attend to the needs and the affairs regarding the health sector in the country. So I think that is where we need to take that discussion where we are now. We have seen so many challenges where you see maybe, for example, in the neighboring counties, health sector or the health service is actually working in a good way. But again, in another county, you're seeing there are challenges because there are some people or governors or county governments which are unable to pay their people or to pay their nurses or health practitioners. They are not able to buy maybe the medical equipment or even the drugs for these hospitals. So it poses a very big challenge. That is why I am of the opinion, and I think I agree 100% with those of that similar opinion, that we maybe need to consider having a commission like that of TSC to handle the health sector in our country today.
All right. So there's also agriculture, rural and urban development sector has been allocated 59.1 billion Kenya shillings. And then if you go back to the beginning of the year, where farmers, even maize, was not being accepted in the granaries because apparently somebody had gone out and imported maize and one side of the country, there's enough food. In fact, it's being wasted. The other side of the country, people are dying of hunger. That was the extreme ends during the beginning of the year. Yeah. So 59.1 billion shillings has been allocated to agriculture and rural and urban development sector. Should the farmers be optimistic?
Well, you see, when it comes to this budgetary allocation, it's not just about the figures. It's about how this is going to trickle down to the ordinary people down there. How is it going to reflect down there? Because again, when you're having this money is being allocated to these very critical sectors of our economy, and tomorrow you hear maybe farmers are complaining that maybe they have not been paid their dividends. Look at, for example, what is happening with Mumia Sugar Company. It's down. The cotton industries in most of the western part of Kenya actually down today. You go to, of course, the major part of Rift Valley, which is producing a lot of maize. I mean, farmers have been complaining. And it's not about the question of the farm inputs alone. It's also about the prices of the price of the maize itself, and also generally the price of selling the maize itself after you've cultivated is a very big challenge that farmers have been actually facing. Look into the coffee, for example, tea. I mean, the agriculture sector has actually faced a lot of setbacks in the recent past, and I think it is only incumbent upon the minister in charge to see into it how we can remedy this so that the farmers cannot lose hope completely. Because again, we should underscore the fact that agriculture is the backbone of our Kenya's economy. So if you are going to allocate these monies to this critical industry or critical sector, but again, it is not going to do that which is intended for, then it will just be like we are doing nothing. So we need to be very, very serious and follow up and ensure that this money is, because again, when you go and look into the particulars in this budgetary allocation, there's money, for example, for farm inputs, maybe for subsidies when it comes to fertilizers, ensuring that maybe farmers are going to be paid early enough and good money, and so many of those such kind of things. We need to see that all this is going to be implemented as it should, other than people actually just making the chain of cartels that we have been seeing and putting this money into their pockets at the expense of the many farmers in the country who are actually toiling and sweating to see that maybe they are making ends meet. So it's an unfortunate affair, but again, I think this budget, as it's going to be read tomorrow, we need also to put, strict measures to ensure that these monies are not going to be lost.
And are spent well.
Yeah.
All right. So earlier in May, CS Rotich made a revelation, and he said 61% of our taxes will go to debt repayment from July. Mm-hmm. So all the monies that is being collected from with KRA, the internal tax collection, 61% of that will go towards debt repayment.
Yeah, you know, we are actually juggling with so many challenges as a country. One, we have, I would say, an overambitious budget because one, our own revenue cannot meet it. We have to borrow. Second, even with the little that we are collecting as a country, we still cannot actually, we are not able even to use it. We are supposed to be paying the debts which we have accumulated over time, and we still continue to borrow. So it's a very big challenge. It is time we need to see, I mean, the policy makers, those in the treasury actually sit down and see what is the best practice to adopt at this particular moment. Because again, with this kind of trend, it's very, very dangerous. We are getting into a level where we will not be able to get enough taxes even to run the affairs of government. We do not have enough taxes to run to provide services for our people. Yet we still have also a burden of paying the debts or the monies that we have borrowed from outside this country. So it's a very big challenge that we need to do a total kind of review. Which way forward? We need to do an audit. What are we going to do with this kind of, for example, this kind of challenges, financial challenges that the country is facing? One is ensuring that we seal all the loopholes in as far as tax collection is concerned. Second is that we need also to promote and ensure that we create an enabling environment, for example, for the small and medium enterprise in our country today. For example, there's this discussion around the interest rate caps. You remember about that when government actually adopted that law where we had to, for example, the banks are supposed to give loans at affordable rates.
Is it 9%?
Yeah, 9%. But again, they are not accessible. You get that is a challenge in itself. I mean, the government has actually outlined this policy or law that we need to get these loans at affordable prices or affordable rates. But again, they are not accessible. Now the banks have gone back and decided to do what? To actually pose so many challenges or hurdles for anyone who will want to access these loans. We are talking about, for example, lowering the cost of electricity, and I'm sure President Kenyatta has been categorical on this, that he wants to promote the small and medium enterprise, and that is why he looks into some of these enabling factors to see into it that it makes it easy for these people to thrive in these businesses. But again, every other time, like you said earlier, you are having the same challenges. Why is it that the cost of electricity remains the same? Yet President Kenyatta did direct that we need to say it's coming down. It does not remain
the same. It has gone up.
It's going up. In any case, it's going up. You get the point.
House, yes.
So we are having the interest rate caps actually coming down, for example, to 9%, like you alluded. But again, we are not accessing this money. So this is a very, very big challenge that needs to be addressed, so that we bring so many people on board in the small and medium enterprises, so that we can have more people do business, and we, as a result, the government will be collecting more revenue to continually fund its projects. A second point is also on the question of for example, how we are going to strengthen this institution called the Kenya Revenue Authority. Is it the question of the manpower? Do we have maybe less manpower in this institution, or is it the machinery itself, or do we have people who are not competent and suitable enough to serve in this institution, in that we are getting losses instead of actually us increasing? Because again, the population is increasing today. The needs of the people is continually increase. The taxes are also supposed to increase, but you see the budget is going up, the budget projections are going up, but again, every other time we are having a downfall when it comes to collection of the revenue. What is the problem? We expect, as the businesses expand, as the population grows, as all this is being done by the government, the revenue collection also have to actually witness a positive margin.
All right. So, yeah, as I mentioned before, CS for Treasury earlier in May said that 61% of Kenyans' taxes will go towards repayment of debts starting July. And the country is expected to spend around 366.4 billion on interest payment alone. Debt servicing obligation is expected to rise in the next years as more loans mature. So are we over borrowing as a country?
Well,
and is it justified?
One may be forgiven to say that we are over-borrowing. But again, if this over-borrowing could be translated into developmental projects, then I think Kenyans will not be having a reason to complain. When you have, for example, money is allocated to the dams, is the famous, is it Aurora and Kimwarere or whatever it is?
Yes.
And this money is, it is, you can't quite see what this money has.
That is actually a loan from Italian government.
Yeah, you can't quite see what this money has done. When you have money, for example, allocated for the Gulana Kulalu irrigation scheme, and you can't quite see the result. When you have maybe monies allocated to the health sector or allocated to the to the Kenya Power, for example, corporation, and you're not seeing the result in these particular sectors, I mean, Kenyans will be forgiven really to complain and say, we are over borrowing. If at all we are doing this and we are seeing tangible results, I mean, we are seeing things being done, then it will give everyone hope that probably we'll also have these very developmental projects helping us to finance or even to pay back the monies that we are borrowing from these external, external agencies or organizations. So it's very, very important for us to address this, because much as we borrow, this has to translate, or it has actually to synchronize with the kind of developmental agenda that we have as a country. President Kenyatta has made very clear of his agenda and his legacy and what he wants to achieve as he serves his second and last term in office as president. I mean, the question of affordable housing, the healthcare, universal healthcare, the question of, for example, the infrastructure in the country today. I mean, these are very, very key areas of economy that we need to, that budget has been factored in. But again, there are people who are waiting. I mean, there are people who are just but waiting this money to be allocated to these sectors, and you're not going to see a lot happening in this sector. So that's why I'm saying we need to continually encourage the president, encourage the anti-corruption agencies, so that at least for the first time we want to see actually this money is actually doing that which is intended for Miriam and for the benefit of the viewer. And
talking about the money to do what is intended to do, this year the county governments and the judiciary are set to receive an estimated 372.6 billion. That is for the county governments. And of course the judiciary, 18.9 billion. Judiciary has been, crying that they do not have enough money, because the Chief Justice Maraga had come out and say they need more courts, they need more staff and things like that. So they've been allocated 18.9 billion respectively, but the county governments have been given 372.6 billion, and also there's been an equalization fund, 5.8 billion, that is meant for the marginalized, the underdeveloped counties, and that has been there since the promulgation of the new constitution. And you see a county like Turkana, for example, remember what was happening earlier this year, January, February, March. People are starving, people are dying of hunger, and when you see Turkana is one of the counties that receive most of this money that is allocated to the counties, I don't understand.
Miriam, there's one thing we need to understand. There could be people who are hell-bent in creating apathy and disaffection against the head of state or against the president, to be precise. Because again, when you go on to this budgetary allocation today, you'll clearly see that there's money that has been allocated maybe to these specific needs, maybe to the people with disability or to the youth in terms of maybe the youth development fund, or even to the elderly people in the country today. But how often have you had people actually even complain that there's a tedious process even to access these finances, that even at some point they are being asked to produce a few more coins for them to get those funds. For example, the elderly people or the widows and the widowers who are supposed to get, say, 5,000 shillings a month or even 3,000, there are officers who are supposed to actually to part with a few coins so that they can facilitate you to get this money. So if you're getting 3,000 and you have to part with 2,000 to get 3,000, what is the benefit of it after all? So those are some of the challenges. I mean, when it comes to government, it is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's releasing these funds to these people or to these projects. But again, there are people who are doing, the elites in this case, who are supposed even to enlighten, people who are supposed to be role models, people who are supposed to guide those who are not, who are less privileged, maybe, for example, in getting education or getting access to this information. But again, they're the same people who are actually compromising the entire processes. So it's a very big challenge we are having, and politics is also at play when it comes to this. Because again, you will ask yourself, if the money has been released, why would somebody actually hold on to this money?
On top of that, they get the equalization fund.
Yeah, yes. And another thing also I think is about the counties. I mean, counties are just very relaxed. They're not doing much in terms of also collecting revenues in their respective jurisdictions. Why should they actually wait until when the national government has to give them funding? When in essence, for example, when you come to Nairobi as a county, they get how much in form of taxes in a given month or even in a day. It's a lot of money. But again, these people continually want to cry and say they are not getting enough. You go to every other of these counties, you'll find people actually complaining and lamenting that they don't have enough money. Why? Because they're just there relaxing and waiting for the national government to actually pluck from the national cake and give to them. So I think it is time we also need to have this discussion and give them also some kind of targets that they should meet. By doing so, I mean, we'll also be encouraging and motivating them to go out there from the comfort zone, to get out of the comfort zone and begin also to look into the policies and ways on how they can generate more revenue for their counties. Because again, we cannot continually cry. Even if when we want to just do a road, we need to ask the national government. When we need to build a small hospital, we need to ask the national government to give us funding. So that's a very, very big challenge that we need to look into as a country. Like I said, the devolution has come with teething problems, which we will continually address as time goes by, because it's not like an overnight thing you'll want to say this is what we want to do. We are continually facing these challenges, and it's actually like a learning curve. It's a learning process. It's telling us the kind of pros and cons, the kind of challenges and achievements we have made as a country ever since we promulgated this new constitution and with the coming in or the implementation of the devolution. So with time, and even as Kenyans continue to discuss about the necessity to have a review of our constitution, I think these are some of the things that we are going to have to really discuss as a country and find solutions moving forward.
Yes, and you just mentioned that the counties sometimes are very relaxed in terms of how they collect revenues. And, and they do collect revenues, I'm sure, but they sort of wait from the national government for the share, and a lot of this money is mismanaged. And it's like, do you think it's because Kenyans don't really understand their position when it comes to management and when it comes to public service, the Kenyans themselves? Because the constitution is very clear. This is a Mwananchi constitution. You have a say. You have a right to decide priorities in your counties. So why are Kenyans not really participating? Do they understand that their participation in terms of policy making and development projects in their counties, their voices matter and their opinions matter? And do they even go there and make them go there with the projects and what they want the county officials or the county governments to prioritize at? So that could be one of the reasons why maybe the county governments are very relaxed in terms of even how they run these counties, because nobody's really holding them accountable in the counties. But also, why is it on our part as Kenyans, what else can we do really to make sure these people, they get to do what we want them to do, especially in the counties? And as well, has devolution so far worked with all these problems and all this? Every day when Auditor General comes with the reports, and just a few months ago he was presenting the report, he's done the audit all over the counties, and maybe Makueni was let off the hook, but a lot of this county, the corruption and mismanagement is just the top priority. And the development money, as the Audit General report was finding out, the money allocated to development was very little, sometimes none. A lot of it went to salaries and went to others. What was it? Things that you can't. It's even embarrassing to say, and especially some counties that are really in need of this money. So where's the disconnect? Do we start holding these people accountable, or maybe public participation?
You know, when Kenya adopted this new constitution in 2010, there was a lot of, jubilation. There was a lot of excitement. And as it has been touted that Kenya has adopted one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. But again, it has come with its own burden and challenges. When you talk about participation or public participation, for that matter, it is not quite precise. It is not elaborate in the sense that with which platform is an ordinary Mwananchi going to actually have this public participation? Who is it that is actually entitled to participate on your behalf? You're a Nairobian, I believe so. And how often, even if you can remember, how often have you, even at one point, have you ever had anyone come to ask you about any decision or anything regarding the county government of Nairobi? That is what we call, we refer as public participation.
That's why we have the MCs, I think
that is it. What they are doing is, and that is why we are saying, when you have a leadership that only thinks what they're doing is right, then that is where problems begin. We need to have people who continually consult and ask, what is it that we can do what is the priority. For example, if you're taken to, say, let me just give, for example, Eastern Province or the Ukambani region, if you taken there, or if you're a leader elected in that particular place, or even if you have been appointed to just go there and maybe oversee some of the developmental projects or ensure that there are certain things you're going to do, the first thing or the first challenge that we look into is trying to understand from these people what is the biggest challenge that they are facing. You can decide and say, I want to put up so many police stations in, for example, Machakos, Kitui, but the biggest challenge that these people are facing in this place is not maybe insecurity, it's lack of water. So we have priorities that are upside down. Why is it that we cannot have our priorities right? If it is water, let us prioritize and say, this is what the people need. You cannot say, I want to give you as much police stations as possible, yet the challenge that people are facing is lack of food and maybe lack of water. So that is what we refer as public participation. Are you really getting to the people and understanding what are the needs? The reason why they are not going out to do this public participation or engaging the people is that they know that through this for us, or through these public participations, people get more enlightened, people get to understand, they get more information, they get more empowered, they get more civilized, and really get to understand the nitty-gritties about these developmental projects. And in that case, it becomes difficult even for them to swindle some of this money. So that is why you find out that maybe a small toilet or a small classroom somewhere in a given county or in County X has been constructed using about 10 million or so much. You get the point. There's a story about,
And then the governor will come to
I don't know, I can't quite remember. Was it in Bomet? You remember the bridge, the controversial bridge that I suppose they used over, I don't know how much millions of Kenyan taxpayer money.
The one that went down.
I don't know if it was, no, that one was the Budalangi one. There's another one that happened in Bomet County.
Yes.
And I'm sure, was it there's an agency that directed that bridge had to be brought down. I mean, the lot of money was used to construct that bridge, but when you see the monies vis-a-vis the project itself, it was not actually reconciling. What does it tell you? We do these things without really involving the ordinary people, because we feel like they get more enlightened, they get to question more and get to understand how this project is going to be implemented. So that is why you see they make these projects opaque. So that is one of the challenge we have. So how are we going to enhance public participation? I think that is your question. How are we going to ensure that the people are really involved in all this? We need maybe to relook into it, because it's very vague. It's very opaque. How do you say that I need to participate in maybe the affairs of my county or in the affairs of my country, for example? I mean, have you ever even gone to, say, for example, to parliament and give your views about anything that legislators are making?
Or just a public baraza.
A public baraza, you may not even get a chance. Or even if you get a chance to speak, I mean, rarely do these things get implemented. So that's a very big challenge. So we want to see how people's views are going to be anchored in every of these projects and every of these developmental agendas that we have in our country. By doing so, we will also be instilling confidence in the people that really this is what our money is actually being used for, and it's not just wasted by people who are swindling this money for their own benefit. So that's a challenge that we have to contend with and need to find solutions moving forward on how we are going to curb and reduce all these loopholes that we have.
Our viewer, this is People's Court, and today we are looking at a pre-Kenya budget. Remember, tomorrow the National Treasury Cabinet, Henry Rotich, is set to unveil the spending plans for the financial year beginning the 1st of July, and he'll also indicate how his ministry will try to fund the 3.02 trillion budget. It is considered one of the most ambitious budget in Kenya's history. And so in the heart of this wonderful budget that Henry Rotich will be presenting to Parliament tomorrow is the Big Four agenda. And last year, I don't know if I got the figures, but some 2.4 billion was allocated to manufacturing, 20.25 billion was allocated to food security, and 44.6 billion was allocated to universal health. 6.5 billion was allocated to affordable and decent housing for all Kenyans. Can we trace this money, the 6.5 billion, for example, for affordable housing in Kenya? Can we say it has done something for the Kenyans?
Well, corruption has eaten a lot of money, if not all, and I think that is why you see now President Kenyatta has decided to invest more in the fight against corruption, because again, in as much as you'll have allocations to all these good sectors, but still when you have corruption, actually there's going to be little to be seen or to be achieved out of all these. Like you said, last year or the other financial year, monies were allocated to these critical sectors, but nothing is to be shown to Kenyans as to what exactly it has been done. For example, when you talk about Kenya being food secure, or actually putting this money to ensure that we
20.25 billion Kenya shillings.
Yes, but are we food secure? That's the question. You know, we need just to look into this and compare. 2 years back and today, how much has been allocated to these critical sectors and what have we really seen? In any case, what we are seeing is that there's continued despondency amongst people in this sector, especially like when you see the maize farmers, the sugarcane farmers, the coffee and tea farmers. There's a lot of disaffection. They feel like there's nothing much being done by the government. But why is it that we are having this allocation, but it cannot trickle down to the benefit or for the benefit of the people on the ground? So that's a very big challenge. Second thing, I suppose, is that we also have some hurdles in an attempt to try and realize this big four agenda. For example, the affordable housing project. You remember there are people who went, Kenyans, who went to court and they sought an injunction in as far as the implementation of the levies. Yeah. So it's also, it poses a challenge. You remember about the laptop project some time back also, when the Jubilee government was coming into place in 2013, they promised that they will be actually implementing this project in about 100 days in office. But again, there are people who rushed to court and actually sought injunctions, and the whole thing actually faced a lot of hurdles. So those are some of the things that we also need to contend with. How can the judiciary, for example, also be coherent? How can they help the government in achieving all these agendas they have? Because in any case, they are not living in the mass. They're living with us here on earth. They're living with us here in Kenya. These same things that the government wants to implement is going to affect or help them in one way or another. So they should not feel like or behave as though they're not part and parcel of the Kenyan populace. They should not feel like, this is not about them. It's about them in one way or another. They have their families, they have their relatives, and in any case, they still remain Kenyan. So they should not be a stumbling block in as far as achieving all these agendas are concerned. We have seen in most cases, you remember even the SGR at some point, the people who went to the court will not have maybe seen the SGR having been constructed to where it is today. The laptops, like I've mentioned, today we have the affordable housing and so many others. You'll see people actually rushing to court and sorting.
Did the laptops really, did somebody challenge that in court?
They did, and not once, not twice. They did. They did.
Under the grounds of?
Sorry?
Under the grounds of?
Well, one, it was like they were saying the Kenyan pupils or the Kenyan students need not necessarily to have the laptops at the moment. That there are things that needs to be prioritized. Mm-hmm. For example, ensuring that maybe we have better facilities like infrastructures like the schools and the desks and the books and such kind of things. So they sought those injunctions and they were lucky to succeed. So at some point it derailed. So, but you see, the government cannot really be at standstill to wait until all these things happen. Things have to continually move. By the time you get back into this, a lot of things would have happened, and so many people will have also gotten an opportunity to swindle the same money, because again, once money has been released for these projects, become very difficult for it to be reversed again. So there are people who really take advantage, and I want to presume that maybe it's the same people who even use these individuals to go to court and seek this injunction, so that maybe we cannot completely implement even these projects.
Yes. So of course, at the heart of it, of the budget, of course, is the agenda 4, as I mentioned before, and that President Uhuru Kenyatta seeks to be his legacy when he leaves. He wants to be remembered as having provided affordable housing for Kenyans, having introduced manufacturing industry, having done better, and also food security for Kenyans. Those images of Kenyans starving and dying of hunger, it's ridiculous, 21st century, and also providing universal healthcare, which right now I think they're doing a pilot in 4 counties. But also, should he want to succeed in all these wonderful plans that he has for this country in the next 3 years, what are some of the measures that he needs to put in place that maybe is lacking to see that this comes to pass?
Well, like I've said, still corruption remains a big thing, and the president has demonstrated the fight against corruption is unstoppable, and I think is getting overwhelming support, not only from those within government, also the ordinary Kenyans are getting really very excited, very happy with the measures President Kenyatta is putting in place to make sure that maybe we can eliminate corruption completely amidst us. A second point I think also is to try and have a conversation with our agencies in the country today, or even some of our institutions, for example, Parliament. The Kenyan Parliament, as much as it's big, is one of the most funded in our country. I mean, in the world. I mean, the Kenyan lawmakers are the ones who are heavily paid in the world today. Yet we are not actually. We are not even that big economy, to say the least. So it really surprises me that you have these lawmakers actually being in the forefront, championing for more allocation on their side, when the ordinary person does not even have food on their table. They're living below $1 a day, and you have lawmakers who want even more budgetary allocation for their own benefits. Today, as we speak, it is even suspected that even in this budget that is going to be read out maybe tomorrow, the 200,000+ Kenya shillings could have been factored in. You remember the accommodation or rental, I am not very sure what exactly they want. These people have been given mortgages, they have been given money, grants for mortgages, they have been given grants for cars, and a lot of privileges and packages. They still want to get 200 plus every month from for every lawmaker. It does not really beat logic. So these are the people, these are the institutions that are supposed to be at the forefront to help President Kenyatta and help the country. Because again, we have the ballooning wage bill. We cannot actually be able to meet it all. It is time that we need to have a discussion on how we are going to reduce this. Instead, we are having people who are only but thinking on how they are going to increase on their side, while the ordinary taxpayer who is already overburdened is getting emaciated every other day. So this is a very big challenge that we are facing, that the people who are supposed to be crusaders, people who are supposed to champion to help us in all these, are the same people who are leading in the opposite direction and asking even more and fleecing the taxpayer even more. So it's very, very unfortunate. So these are some of the things we need to have a sober conversation about. If it's the president trying to have a conversation with the lawmakers, for example, because they play a pivotal role, that is not to belittle what they do. They make laws. They can always get away with what they want. You remember when they threatened the SRC and sometimes even threatening the judiciary itself and saying, if you're not going to allow, if you're going to interfere with this, we are also going to cut down on your budget. And so they have to sit ground, because again, you feel like now, if you are not going to do this, they're also going to do this for us. So it's a very big challenge. And I think the constitution looks like also gave them extreme or autonomous power, because much as they are making laws, they can always maneuver.
They blackmail.
Yes. Like, for example, tomorrow, if you're not going to factor in the 200,000 plus Kenya shillings that each lawmaker is asking for a month, then they're likely going to shoot down this budget. They're not going to pass it. So they they place it as a bait. They place it as a condition. They kind of create, a coup, that this is what we want. If you're not going to do it, then we are not going to do this for you. We're not going to do this in return. So these are some of the things we need to address as a country and see. And all these things actually are more of structural challenges, because where does it emanate from? It's from the constitution. It is the same constitution that we voted as Kenyans that has given these people this autonomy to do whatever kind of things they want to do. And that is why you see people saying
these calls for referendum are legitimate. We need to
they are legitimate and
look at some things.
There are people who feel like maybe we should not have it after all, because it's going to clip some powers from these people. It is also going to reduce the number. I've talked about this many times. Why would you have, for example, Nairobi as a county being represented by over 20 individuals? We're not just talking about 20 individuals, 20 offices, because an office of an MCA has so many other people that are actually working within that office. You have a women rep who is elected and another one who has been nominated. You have a senator. You have 17 elected members of parliament, and you still have a governor. You have a deputy governor. You have all these people, and they are still representing just this very small county of Nairobi. It's a very, very big challenge, and I think it's a discussion that that we need to candidly have without any kind of biasness, without any kind of fear. Because again, if we move in this direction, I'm telling you, as a country, we are going to face so many challenges. Already we are facing so many challenges, because if you're not able to raise the revenue even to run the affairs of government, or even to to implement our budget, we continually want to borrow from outside, and yet we feel like we are just comfortable, we feel like everything is okay. It is time we need to have this candid discussion and say enough is enough. It is time maybe we reduce this representation. I mean, what is the need of having, for example, the Senate and the National Assembly? Why can't we amalgamate? Why can't we have maybe one institution only doing this one thing?
Yes, indeed, very vital points that you're raising, Dundi. Ume, you're saying fighting corruption is very simple. Just set example with yourself by declaration of business and open accountability by African leaders, and can never do it because there's so much love, power, and without ideology. And Dundi, if you are familiar with Kenyan politics, after the President Kenyatta came out and said, you know what, lifestyle audit for every public servant, that is where the problem started.
It started from there.
So I'd like us to continue much with this conversation, but unfortunately, we've come to the end. So tomorrow, I don't know, are you optimistic? I don't know, are you maybe there could be other surprises.
Well, I don't
budget.
I don't want
when Henry Rotich, the CS, was giving the projection earlier in May, he sort of conveniently left out 78 billion Kenya shillings. He did not include that, but it is part of that budget. So maybe tomorrow, let's see if it will be there.
Well, I will be lying to Kenyans if I did sit on this platform and say maybe I'm really aware of what the budget entails or what it contains tomorrow. We'll just have to wait and see. These are just I mean perception or the thinking that we have as regards to what is likely going to feature in tomorrow's budget, because again, all these things never come from the moon. I mean, they're just things to do with what we have been used to seeing every other financial year, every other time the budgetary allocations or the budget estimates are being read to the country. So, I mean, it's not far from maybe what Kenyans are expecting. But again, there's that passionate appeal from the ordinary people that they should not overtax an already overburdened taxpayer, and also they should look into the question of VAT. I don't want to hear that maybe the price of unga is going up again, the price of paraffin or the price of petrol is going up again, electricity, those small things. I mean, we shouldn't continually.
LPG, it might go up.
The gas
might go up.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it's a very big challenge. We need to look into how we are going to cushion the ordinary people, those low income earners. We do not want to see actually more taxation being imposed onto them. There are so many openings, there are so many loopholes that if we are going to actually bridge them, then we will be sufficiently collecting enough taxes to be able to run the affairs of this government.
All right, Tawish, thank you very much. And for our viewer, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Hopefully we can see you tomorrow for another edition of Good Morning Africa. My name is Miriam Guto. It has been a pleasure.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.